All right. Welcome to another episode of the Blunt Force Conservative Podcast. Really excited about today. It has been a fantastic week down here in Mississippi, except for the temperature. It's about 90 degrees down here right now. I got up to 97 earlier in the week. So if you want to shed some water weight, this is the place to come. Been pretty busy this past week. I've got a granddaughter, as some of you may know, that'll be here in September via my oldest boy, Jake, and daughter-in-law, Sarah Grace. So little Sutton Grace will be here around September 23rd. And I've been out sanding and painting a changing table out in my garage to get that ready for them. And of course, my wife, and she seems to be, I know what the term nesting is. And my wife seems to be jumping into the nesting thing with my daughter-in-law, with our daughter-in-law. So they're both excited about getting that baby's bedroom set up. Had some fun earlier this week. I did have a conversation for some of those that were in a spaces with me. I did get to connect with George Santos, the former congressman out of New York, the one that was expelled from Congress, that my congressman, Michael Guest, who's chairman of the House Ethics Committee, had a significant role in getting him ousted out of Congress. And I've spoken a number of times about the conversation I had with Michael Guest about that, and about his and Kevin McCarthy going after Matt Gaetz before the November elections. So it's pretty interesting. I'm just some 61-year-old guy down here in Mississippi. I've only been on X now for about since late August, and it's interesting with just about 2,200 or so followers. Some of the people that think I have this significant impact on things. I'm kind of humbled at that. But I'm also humbled at the number of people that I have come into my circle, that God has brought into my circle, that have kind of helped me out with navigating the social media stuff, with what are my next steps. Am I going to run for office down here in Mississippi? Am I going to just continue to do the media thing? A combination of both. We're still working through that, hoping to make a decision here soon on that finally. But I wanted to give a shout out. I want to start this as a tradition with the beginning of the shows. I did that last week with giving a shout out to my civics teacher from the mid 1970s, Miss Nichols, and the impact that she had on my life and my conservative values. And this week, I want to give some more shout outs. So earlier in the week, I get this text message and said, Chris has been added. And I'm like, what am I getting added to? And there were 3 people in this group, including myself. And I'm like, what's going on? And this other person that I won't name that was in the group, she said, this is Kimberly's producer. And I didn't want to seem idiotic, so I go off in a side text message like, who are we talking about here? So the other person in that text group was my good friend John Nance. John is a fellow retired FBI agent. He's been in my tight circle of about 5, now 6 retired FBI agents that we've been in a small text group for going on goodness, over 5 years. We've had some success in kind of getting our voice out behind the scenes about some things we'd like to see, some things we'd like to see happen in the FBI. We've kind of leaned on each other with getting some connections going, because what I have found is it's all about connections. And what I found out was that John was scheduled to go on a podcast and he was unavailable. John was actually with his wife down in my neck of the woods, growing up into Lower Alabama, the Redneck Riviera down in Orange Beach. And he's down there enjoying the Sugar White Sands and the Emerald Coast, and trying to take advantage of some of the recommendations that I'd given him about places to go. And he said, I can't do the podcast this week, but I got a recommendation for you. And that put me in touch with this lady. So Mr. Producer, if you'll pull that up on the screen, what I'm sharing, that is Kimberly Guilfoyle. I never thought in a million years, after seeing her on Fox News years ago, of seeing her on the stage when she was dating Don Jr., that I would come into contact with her. But I had a pleasant conversation with her earlier this week. Was really impressed with how things went. We did get a chance to chat before the podcast. She does hers recorded and then post. and we found out we have a mutual friend, and I'm going to see that mutual friend here over the 4th of July holidays, because we've got some things to talk about. That mutual friend, he and his wife have just had their first child. So I want to go by and in person congratulate them on that. I also want to take the time to visit with my dad. My dad will be 82 years old on July 4th. You want to talk about a family that is entrenched into into the history of the United States, actually being born on holidays. We have a number of those in the family. My late mom was actually born on St. Patrick's Day. My grandfather, my maternal grandfather, was born on Valentine's Day. So it's we have a number of people. And then my youngest son here, although it's not a an official holiday, he was born on May 5th, so he's a Cinco de Mayo baby, which we do celebrate that as well. The next so Kimberly, I encourage you to follow her. I have she's following me, which I really appreciate that with her reach, and I listen in on her podcast, especially when she has friends of mine on. The next person that I want to chat about is this person right here. Come on, there we go. And that is a guy that I've come to know here in the past year or two, FX Reagan. He is an author. I was just actually DMing with him this morning on some things. So FX, that is not his real name. I'm not going to tell you what his real name is because he hasn't given me the approval to do that. If he does, I'll put that out there at a later date. But he is a retired special agent in charge of the FBI and is pursuing his passion in his retirement, which is writing books. And you can see in the background there a number of his books that are available out there. I encourage you to go read those. Some of them are based on his experiences in the FBI. I think it's a good read. I wish him well in that. He's connected with a lot of other authors that are out there, like Jack Carr. So FX is a good guy to connect with. Next is this person. I think that my guest that we're going to have here shortly knows this person, this Liberty Valkyrie. I hope to have her on the show at one point. She and there's another person out there, Stealth Medical, and the way that I got in touch with a lot of people were myself and a friend of mine, Kim George, were in a Spaces on X, and we were just kind of listening in, and they were interviewing Jim Verdi, who was Dan Bongino's former producer before Dan became the deputy director of the FBI. And we got to know Jim a little bit. We got to know the others, and we ended up getting invited to speak. We were just there to kind of listen around, and we ended up talking for about an hour and a half. There were a number of former J6 prisoners that were in there. I have a lot of sympathy for them. Those of you that know me know that I ran the FBI Civil Rights Program down here in Mississippi. Had some significant successes here, not just me, the squad. I just kind of was the whipping boy of the front office to kind of keep them out of the way so that the agents could get the things done. We got to cement our place in history with the reopening of Mississippi Burning, the Mississippi Burning case. We brought back Jim Ingram, was a retired FBI agent. He was on the original Mississippi Burning case, and we brought him back as a contractor to help out. Unfortunately, Jim passed away back in 2009. But the successes we had is we put James Ford Seal and Edgar Ray Killen in prison for murdering some of those civil rights people back in the 60s. So glad to bring some closure to that family. The next person here is Kevin Cork. I have not personally met Kevin. I have DM'd him a couple of times, but I came to know him through a fellow retired agent that's in my group, Mike Mahoy Adams is how you pronounce his name, if you want to look for him on X. And apparently Kevin knows him, and out of the blue, Kevin starts following me. So every now and then I will weigh in on something, or if I see him on Fox News, I like to tune in and listen in. He's been pretty receptive to that. He kind of picks up when I post. The last post that I put on there, he was on the Saturday show, and he had she's not a friend yet, but that's Katie Pavlich. Pavlich, I guess it's Pavlich. I'll find out at one point. But Katie is somebody that I've been on the hunt for to try to get her to follow me back. My friend John Nance is pretty tight with her since they're both with townhall.com. And I kind of jokingly said to Kevin last time that he was on the air, hey, look forward to watching this. You and, you're one of the few shows that I actually like to watch on Fox and listen in. And I said, you're a reason for me to watch. And if you can get Katie, while she's on set, follow me back. That'll be another reason to follow. That still hasn't happened yet. We'll see if Kevin will come through. Next, gotta love this guy, liberty-loving Latino, Chris Salcedo. Chris and I got in touch with each other a couple of years back. He actually reached out to me. And again, another mutual friend that had done his show before had passed along my cell phone number, and I got a call from Chris on a Saturday morning about coming on his radio show at KSEV, and then later on a couple of hits on his television show. Chris has become a good friend. We text some jokes back and forth and stuff, so it's nice to have somebody of his notoriety that I can chat with. Next we got here is the guy that I talked about earlier, Jim Verdi. Jim is the former producer of the Dan Bongino show. He's really tight with Dan. He was just up in DC visiting with Dan, got to go to FBI headquarters and see the inside, and got a coin from a challenge coin from Director Patel and from Dan, which I thought was pretty cool. And today, Jim is actually out grilling. He is a grill master, so he and I were sharing some recipes. I can cook, but as my producer, my brother-in-law, Chris Allen will tell you, the best griller in our family is my brother, Kevin. Kevin, he got the gene somehow. The best steak I've ever eaten is a steak that he has cooked. But Jim and I were texting back and or DMing back and forth about some recipes. So I'll be interested to see how it comes out today. Then we got this guy. I gave a shout out to him at the end of the Kimberly Guilfoyle show. That's Clay Edwards. Clay is the #1 morning show here in the state of Mississippi. 5 years ago, he started out on WYEB, which has had me in from time to time as a guest host and a guest. And Clay built it from the ground up. He used to work in the nightclub industry. He's done a lot of things, sold cars. He's a motorhead. And, he has this podcast that he streams from WYEB in the morning. Highly encourage you reaching out to him. It is very Jackson centric. His moniker is Save Jackson, Save JXN. And he is doing the Lord's work and trying to clean that town up. I live about 8 miles north of Jackson, Mississippi, and Madison is night and day different from Jackson. Jackson is just it's a terrible place. It's dangerous. Even though I'm trained and often armed, I don't like to go into Jackson after hours. But do look to connect with Clay. Connected with anybody at WYEB. And then we've got the man, Rob Manus. Rob has become a good friend. He and I connected well before I even knew he had a podcast, based on some number of people here encouraging me to run for an office or two. And Rob's been a good mentor on that. He ran for Senate down in Louisiana and then decided to move to the Gulf Coast of Mississippi. And Rob's a great patriot. That brings me to our guest today, the one, the only, Shell. You can see her there. We want to find out more about her. I've been in some spaces where she's at. Some of the spaces, I don't think I was supposed to be there. I just it popped up on X that Shell was in a space and speaking, and I pop in, and it's really more, I guess, Latin centric in that area. There weren't a lot of people in there. I popped in just to see what was going on, and it probably looked like I was stalking her. But I really am impressed with how she comports herself online in the way that she handles the spaces when Rob has his show on. So, Mr. Producer, let's go ahead and bring Shell on board here and get to know her. Hello, Shell. How are you doing today?
Well, hi, Chris. I'm fine. How are you? I love that lineup of shout outs you did. That's fantastic. I know all of them but two. So
all of them
they're
too.
all,
well, hopefully you'll pick up the other two and start following them.
Oh, I certainly will. I certainly will. Jim Verdi being one of my favorites. He's so spicy sometimes, online. I love following him. He's been on my show. He's a fantastic guest. And what a patriot, huh? I just really adore that man.
Yeah. Weren't you part of that? Kim George is the one that let me know that I guess that Stealth Medical was running a Spaces or something. I thought I remembered you being in there, the one where she and that Heather, the Liberty Valkyrie, were featuring Jim. And Kim and I were just in there to kind of listen. And the next thing I know, we're getting asked a lot of questions. Were you do you recall that one, or were you in that Spaces at the time?
Yes, I believe I was in there. Yes. Jim was straightening out some business for Dan Bongino, wasn't he, in that space?
He was. It was I felt kind of bad. That Spaces, you guys run those things sometimes for a long time. I think that one ran for about 5 hours. And an hour and a half of it was nothing but me and Kim George first taking a lot of attacks from J6 prisoners, wanting to know which side of the fence we were on, whether we supported them or, or supporting the actions that were taken against them. And I think we got that clarified. There's been a couple of those guys and gals that were J6 prisoners that are followers of mine. I follow them, and as I said in there, I'm a big proponent of protecting civil rights. It's literally the one thing you swear an oath to do as a military member, FBI agent, even as a representative. So I hope they can get some reconciliation or closure on their cases. So do you are you really well connected with that Heather and Stealth Medical? Are you guys friends? Have you been together for a while?
Well, I know Stealth. I've never met her. I have Heather. During Hurricane Helene, I had to evacuate, and Heather lives in the Panhandle, so I head her way and stayed there for 2, 3 days with her and her family, and we had a good time together. They are a fantastic family, and Heather, wow, what a smart, the most beautiful woman I think I've ever seen.
Is
She's
that
just,
picture literally her?
oh yes.
Okay, I'm just checking. So you got
It's
to be careful on these profile pics.
you do, but no, that's absolutely her. In fact, I think she's more beautiful in person, and
Okay.
her personality is just, I mean, stunningly beautiful. You know what I'm saying? And
Oh
she's
yeah.
really making moves over there on TikTok right now and trying to get that conservative movement going over there with lives and some of her pre recorded videos. I think she's just doing great. And I'm so proud of her. I really am. The first time I encountered her, in fact, was in Rob Manus's show. I brought her on the stage, gave her a mic, and here we are. She's just fantastic.
She is amazing. Each week I want to try to give a shout out to some people that I follow. Some of them, of course, will be more famous than others. I consider Rob to be pretty famous. Pretty much everybody's more famous than I am. Uh, but I really admire what they do out there. The time that they put in it, and I can't imagine that they get much remuneration, much pay or anything from the followers and stuff. I've talked to a guy that I've come to know here, a shipwreck crew. Bill Shipley
Love
is
Jill.
he's got a large following, and he told me about what he makes, and he is on there. I mean, morning to night. I just don't have the time to sit and do that. I'm still doing side hustles, trying to make some extra money to supplement my retirement. So tell us a little bit about you. Are you willing to disclose what is your name?
Shell. My
It
name?
is it is Shell?
Yeah, hold on a second. I've got a loud vehicle. I'm so sorry. No,
That's
it's
all right.
Michelle. My full name is Michelle. But
Okay.
even my family never called me that unless I was in big trouble. It's always been Shell, so that's what I go with. Shell, Shelly, or Chelly Babes. That's what my dad called me. So,
Okay.
that's what we go with.
What about Hot Tamale? I see that in your moniker as well.
Yeah, you remember when Yahoo Mail got started? Everybody, we were still dialing up with AOL and, watching the little running man as we were connecting. I That was my first email address all those years ago, and so I've kept it all this time. A lot of people think I should change it to my show name, Shellshocked, but I kind of like it. I mean, it's like sentimental to me, so I'm going to hang on to it.
Are you of Hispanic descent? Is that where
Yes.
the okay?
Yeah, my
Uh,
mother, my mother, her father was from Mexico, and then my grandmother immigrated from Spain, and yeah, they met in California, and got married, had 9 children. So I'm Spanish and Mexican. So yeah, and that's Shelley.
9 children. What's the breakdown, boys and girls, in that?
8 girls, 1 boy. He was born right in the middle of them and spoiled rotten.
Oh my gosh. I do I need to keep praying for this individual that's
Uh,
surrounded by.
he's passed, hun. It's
Oh, I'm sorry to hear
no,
that. I'm so
no,
sorry.
that's okay. That's okay. You know, at my age, I've only got a few aunties left, and even my own mother, she passed a year ago, April. So
Oh, good.
it's just that time. It's unfortunate. I miss them all. I absolutely love my family, but us families, we had lots and lots of cousins with 8 girls, right? So I
Hmm.
still have lots and lots of cousins that I get to visit and hug and talk politics with, because Hispanics tend to lean left, but I've managed to pull a few of them to the right. So it's been an
Well, that
interesting thing.
that is awesome. I have a brother and a sister, and my sister's married to producer Chris here. She's, I guess she's still fluent in Spanish. She actually did the immersion thing. I think it was either in college or high school, where she went and lived with a family in Mexico that didn't speak any English for like 6 weeks and came back. I know very little Spanish. I speak some Turkish for my time overseas, but it really hasn't come in handy since I left there. Not many Turkish people in Mississippi. So tell me how you got looking on here. You've only been on X since April of 2022. How
Yes.
did you start? How did you get started? What prompted you, and how did you start to build your following?
Well, I was on Twitter since 2009, and the
Oh,
day that Trump was taken down, I was among the many that were taken down as well. This is a new account. It used to be Hot Tamale 01. Now it is 02 because they won't give me my main account back. But I'm good with it. How I got started was, boy, I don't know. Right before the Trump administration took office in his first uh, run, I met a lot of people on Getter, right? Um,
mhm.
Jason Miller had gotten it started up, and we all got accounts over there, and thank goodness we did because we all got smashed on Twitter, and that's where we landed, right? And
Mhm.
I started getting to know people there, posting, getting a following. Met Tim Young, and him and I do a lot together, and we're still fantastic friends. But it just kind of started from there. Jason Miller saw something in me, and he flew me to New York City for the Getter 1 year anniversary party, and I got to meet so many people. It was such an opportunity, and it's just been going from there. I've just kind of trucked right along, and tried different things. Started my own show, did Sirius XM radio with Tim for several years, and every time he had me on, we always had a lot of fun. And it's just been a great experience getting to where I am now. And then here I am doing podcasts with you, and a lot of other people, and just doing my thing. So,
Well, how did you get connected with Rob?
Patriot Rob.
Rob Manus, yes,
Oh, Rob Manus. Rob
yes.
Manus. Ah, man. When we were with Red Voice Media, I brought Red Voice Media's lineup of shows to Spaces for the first time ever. We were doing live television broadcasting on Spaces. And I did it for probably about 7.5 hours a day. And he was one in the lineup, and started doing his show, and it was just a fantastic experience. We got to know each other. And when he, Red Voice Media disbanded and he left, I followed him to every network he's been with since and helped do his show. Myself and Kat the Hammer was doing his show. In fact, she was a fantastic host. I would co host with her. And then when she could no longer do the show, I took over, and it's been a great ride. It's been a pleasure to meet the Colonel, and I think he's one of the most upstanding men I've ever met in my lifetime, besides my father.
Yeah, he and Gannon Burton and I have become good friends. I see Gannon every now and then when he makes the trip from North Mississippi down here to Madison for the meetings, some of these luncheons. I may see him this Wednesday, actually, and chat with him. Hoping to get Rob up here at some point, but these luncheons tend to go on when he's on, getting ready to go on the air. What I was really impressed with when I would start getting the notifications about spaces featuring Rob Manus was how well you handle the spaces. You set the tone, you set the rules, you tell everybody what's what, ask a question, mute your mic, all of that. It's really impressive how well you run that space, and it doesn't seem to get out of hand. And you and I have probably been in some spaces where things get out of hand, where people are yelling and screaming and arguing with each other.
Oh
And
yeah.
you definitely take care of that in a hurry. Some of those that I've been in with, not with Heather, but with Stealth Medical. The last one I was in, I had to tune out. It was just three or four people yelling and cussing at each other over stuff. And I think in that one, that guy, the persistence, the one that the long haired guy that
Scott Pressler.
claims yeah, he claims that he did a lot of things to sway the election. Still trying to figure out. He won't answer the question about how did you convert 85,000 Amish people to vote for Trump when there's not 85,000 Amish people up there. Especially, that the math don't math. So he heard me speaking, I think in the last one, and he jumped in and said, "Hey, I just started following you." And I think that was the same one where Santos and I came across each other. So
I love George.
tell me a little bit, what are the things on your mind right now? What are you focused on that's happening in the media, whether it's with politics, news? Heck, you can even ask me anything you want to about the FBI.
Well, I had John Nance on Shellshocked and got to ask him a lot of questions. And then one of y'all's favorites, of course, Kyle Seraphin jumps into the show every once in a while. I know that's a touchy subject, but I've asked a lot of questions. The only question I was never answered was why the difference in tone between, say, you or John Nance and, say, a whistleblower like Kyle Seraphin. Where are you all standing that you have this evidence that this happened, but then somebody else says no, it didn't, it was this way, and you all had the same information. You know what I'm saying? You were all FBI. So why did that fracture happen?
Well, as far as Seraphin, I'll tell you, in my opinion, he's not a whistleblower. And the reason I know this, and it ties in with Jim Verdi and Dan Bongino, the way that I came across him, I had never heard of him. And Nance had sent me a message, said, "Hey, will you listen to this podcast and tell me what you think?" And it was it was Bongino's podcast where he had featured Seraphin, and I'm listening, and one of the things that with people inside the FBI, especially old timers like me, we look at, what did you do? Are you well known inside the FBI because you did something great? Are you well known because you did something stupid? Or are you not known at all? And uh, I heard, that he had been in about 6 years. He even said that. And he was positing on some things like he was some type of expert on the way things work inside the FBI. And it is impossible to get a grasp on all of those things, especially as a street agent in the FBI. And I don't know if Nance told you, Nance actually supervised Seraphin for a while.
Yes, I
And
was aware.
and Seraphin, he even posted the video or audio where and I don't know if he got the permission to do that, but he recorded the conversation between he and the Office of Professional Responsibility supervisory special agent that was assigned to his case, conducting his interview about some what they considered unprofessional contact with the school resource officer. So the letter that they sent to him, it usually takes a number of things to get the attention of where you're the subject of what we call an OPR, that Office of Professional Responsibility investigation. And she addresses it in there that, did you read the letter? This is your opportunity to give us your side of the story. And he acknowledged that he was being suspended or being investigated by the FBI because of unprofessional conduct with the school resource officer and with his coworkers. And so anyway, I listened to this podcast and I'd never heard of the guy. And I'm listening to some of the things that he said he did. He said he was on some specialized team. he was on a surveillance operations team. Uh, it's not exactly a specialized team inside the FBI. People outside wouldn't think that. You do get some training of how to conduct surveillance, the protocols and stuff. And he was talking about how he had, I think it may have been up in Washington State, and he was watching, out there surveilling some of the stuff with the rioting that was going on, the protests and stuff, where they were attacking federal buildings. And he said he finished his shift and then he decided to go out on his own and just kind of sit out there and watch. And that first struck me because that is kind of a sensitive technique, conducting the surveillance. If you go out there on your own, you probably haven't gotten the permission to do that and notified everybody else that you're going to be out there. And if you're discovered, now you draw attention to the other people out on surveillance and put them in danger. So it just seemed to be a lack of maturity. He also was positing on some of the things about the way that FBI headquarters works, the way that things are measured, the way that things are reported. And John wanted me to focus in on that. The last couple of years I was in, I became the FBI classified me as a subject matter expert on integrated program management. So I knew the ins and outs of how things were done. I actually used to teach classes on it. And I'm like, there's no way this guy knows anything. And the things he's saying aren't factual. So then he told me, the story about Kyle. And then of course, sometime later, John had tried to warn Dan Bongino about him and that he was toxic. He'd been toxic inside the FBI. And Dan didn't want to hear it. Dan actually attacked John about that. And then sometime later, it bit Dan, and Dan cut ties with him. So I don't really have a lot of interaction with him. He pops in every now and then. He's, put some very, I guess, sexually oriented things online about me, and I just ignore it. I think people kind of see what he is, and I'm seeing more and more people recognize what he is. I know Dan found out the hard way. So that's kind
I'll
of
tell
how I
you, Chris.
came in touch with him.
I'll tell you what. I've had Kyle and many conversations with Kyle. I believe Kyle is a patriot. I don't believe anybody walks on water at the FBI. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And maybe he did have some issues, and he handles them as Kyle handles them. But I'm not going to be, ridiculing him for trying to straighten out his own beliefs in what may have happened, or how he defends himself. But it's tough to have faith in the FBI and understand Kyle's audience, right? It's tough to have that faith when we've been kind of misled many, many times. And I think James Comey, in essence, had tanked all of that for us, like the final nail, right?
Yeah.
So Kyle has a voice, that I think is important, and as well as you and John Nance. I choose no side, but I think the whole thing is the way these whistleblowers, and I'm not just singling out any one of them, gain this audience is because of their, you know, distrust, which a lot of us patriots feel because we've been waiting for action, arrests, things to take place that is going to, give us our faith back in these three-letter agencies. And some of it makes sense to us and some of it doesn't. So each voice we listen to, we have to use discernment and some wisdom, as and of course actions speak much louder than words, correct? So
They do.
I think Kyle's a patriot. I think you're a patriot. I think the world of John Nance. So whatever has transpired has led Kyle down this road. First of all, defending himself. Second of all, standing on his own morals and beliefs, and I can't fault him for that. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm. Oh, I do understand. Like I said, when they testified initially, I was sympathetic to their claims. The way that I came into it was just making the recommendation. Is this the way you want to go about affecting change? Do you want to go into, if just because somebody disagrees with you, do you want to attack them and call them things, or put pictures of sexual devices online and, attach a name to it and stuff. I just don't operate that way, and I ignore it. Um, I think that two things can be true at the same time. I think that some of the claims that they made were valid. I do think that uh, that there were people making decisions in the FBI about January 6th that were going a little heavy-handed at it. But I think the blame was going at the wrong people. So I do not like James Comey. I didn't like him inside the FBI. I had conversations with him in the FBI and challenged him on things, but I haven't put those out on public media. So when somebody accuses me of just being some, cheerleader for the FBI, what I'm a cheerleader of is getting the FBI back to its core values that were there when I joined, and to strict adherence to the Constitution. I don't believe that top to bottom, everybody in the FBI is corrupt. There were corrupt individuals leading that. Those were coming from DOJ and from Comey, Wray, and starting with Mueller. I had some battles with Mueller inside the FBI. I didn't feel like I needed to go the whistleblower route, because I was doing what you're supposed to do. If you've got problems, bring it through your chain of command and affect some change. And I got some things changed. There were some things I wasn't successful at. I filed an EEO complaint against someone that besmirched white Christian males inside the FBI, and that went all the way up to an administrative judge under the Biden administration. Not under Biden, it was under I think that was still under Obama. Under the Obama, this was prior to Trump, and couldn't make any headway with there. But every year I took the time to rate the chief diversity officer inside the FBI. You could rate your supervisor and two levels above you, and you picked whoever you wanted. And it was usually my supervisor, the special agent in charge, and then I would pick the chief diversity officer, and I'd just tear a new one with, here's the things that I think are antithetical to what we do as FBI agents. So I did fight those battles on the inside. I was a diversity and inclusion coordinator, and some people scratch their heads as how I could do that. Well, I did that as an opportunity to affect change. I was asked to do it by the front office. I was given full reign to how I want to do it. And the measurements at that time were, we had to have 3 celebratory events a year. And rather than focus on immutable characteristics like race or gender or ethnicity to celebrate those, I just chose some other things. So the 3 events that we held when I took over were Veterans Day, National Day of Prayer, and Holocaust Remembrance Month. Holocaust Remembrance. Those were the 3 things that we celebrated, that we pushed forward, that we brought attention to. And I was happy to see the program go away. It really was. It really had no metrics to it. There was an agenda with it, and we were calling that on the inside. And you and I can talk another time. During the last show, I did end with a little more about what I did as a diversity and inclusion coordinator. But with these guys, I think when I came in and tried to make some recommendations, hey, don't get out here and crap post and stuff and attack people that are just trying to give you some advice about how to comport yourself out there. It takes a lot of maturity, demonstrated maturity, to be an FBI agent. And if you act immature, it kind of takes away from your message, is the way that I look at it. I haven't really had any more contact with him. Every now and then he jumps in, I just ignore him. The others, I've had some contact with them. It's usually, it hasn't been pleasant coming back at me, but I don't, I wish them well in their endeavors. If they were truly harmed, if they were truly kicked out or suspended because of the activities of whistleblowing, I'd be the first one to champion them, that they need to come back in and get full compensation and maybe a little more on top of that. But I'm interested in hearing the whole story. I don't know the whole story. I don't have contacts inside the FBI to tell me the whole story. It doesn't work that way when you retire. People think that we do. I do have communications with people that are still in there, and they're willing to listen to what I say, but I don't get any feedback of or inside information. So just to give you a quick example before we get back to talking about more pleasant things, even when I retired, the day I retired, as soon as I walked out the gate, I couldn't go back in. I would have to be escorted back in the building, and they'd have to run a criminal history check before I walked in. That was minutes after walking outside the gate, and I didn't go back for almost 6 years inside the FBI space. I went back this past April just to pick up, see if somebody'd escort me in so I could buy some things from the FBI store. So, I think I get accused, and think Nance gets accused of us having more sway than we actually do. We just we don't appreciate being attacked ourselves. We'll defend ourselves as well, and that's kind of how I've countered it. I honestly just ignore the guys unless somebody sends something to me or a friend of mine gets attacked. Other than that, I
I
move
mean,
on.
that's pretty smart, Chris. On the online attacks that I get, or some personal, say if I'm at an event or something, I immediately, just take the oxygen out of it. No response.
Mhm.
And you talked about Scott Pressler and the math not mathing. Brandon Strzok dropped a nuclear bomb online about that, right?
Mhm.
So things happen. People get on different sides, and these fractures. With my audience, I'm going to give you the view of my audience. Are not doing our conservative movement any justice, the MAGA movement. And then you have a lot of our influencers that are really taking the lead and causing a lot of these fractures. And it saddens me. It really does, because we've worked so hard to get Trump back in the White House and get this mandate, done in the next, what we got 3.5 years left. And then what's next? What's after that, right? So messaging is very important. Getting the right candidate, hopefully Vance, in my opinion. I'd like to see him and Eric Trump, on a ticket. But into the White House again, so we don't lose everything that we've worked for. But our messaging, our fighting, our fracturing, and everything else is damaging our party. Tremendously. And it really saddens me, because that's why I like working for Rob Manus so much. The Colonel has such a good message. He also, gives such a good education about the facts, what's actually going on, and bringing guests that will, kind of give you that inside track that you're talking about, kind of give you that, I don't know, 30,000 foot, view of what's actually going on, and how to, get outside of the box of the influencers and what they're, the messaging they're pushing. Because a lot of them, I mean, I'm sorry, but they're paid. They've got teams to do their social media. They're dispatched. I call it dispatched. And basically sometimes online prostitution, with these influencers. And I've had a battle with that, myself, because you don't want to have a platform that we are finally given without, too much restriction to get that conservative messaging out and get united, with the conservative party and make things happen that we've been waiting for so long, and we're just blowing our opportunity right now, right? And I think that's why I'm so heavy-handed in my spaces, because you talk about the fighting and the arguing, and you listen to three people screaming at each other. I can't do it. I'll mute the room. I'll tell them one at a time. uh, if you're screaming, you lose the value of the conversation. I mean, they could both, or all three, whatever, give their points of view, but one at a time, because I can't hear you. The rest of the audience can't hear you. That we don't understand what you're saying. And there could be a lot of value in that conversation that we're not hearing or understanding. So mind yourself, because when we come into these spaces, that's exactly what we're here for, is the conversation and the value we get from it. Now we can agree to disagree, we can do a lot of things, and everybody could just say, well, I don't feel that way. Well, that's you, great, and then we move on. We also take an opportunity on Shell Shock to kind of decompress. Like the first couple hours, we're going to be straight politics, digging in, having those conversations, bringing people up on the mics. One time, we had 6 city congressmen on that stage, at the same time. And it was the night before Jim Jordan pulled his hat out of the ring for Speaker of the House. And guess who was on that stage with us? Mike Johnson. We didn't even know who he was, but they were introducing him to us the night before. You know, 3 days later, he was voted in Speaker of the House. So, you know, that's valuable, right? When you can have a controlled enough environment that you can actually have your representatives come in and sit on that stage, not be challenged, give us a message as much as they can. You know, they can't just tell us everything, but and get the pulse of the nation by talking to us. And I love that. I love that environment. And I love the spaces because they're like the wild, wild west now. They're like the new frontier of podcasting, right? You know, Alex Jones bringing in uh, his show, everything that's been taking place. You know, Chris Salcido, you mentioned him. We're talking. We're wanting to bring his radio show into spaces so we can integrate the audience and spaces into the show and he can take questions from them. It's just a fantastic utility. I think everyone should be using it. And I don't think everyone should be using it for bad, though, with the screaming, the yelling, the fighting, picking this side or picking that side. But you know, I guess it has to happen because every voice is important, in my opinion. I don't care who's on that stage. If they have 30 followers or 30,000 followers or 300,000 followers, every voice is important. Agree or disagree, it's still important. So, you know, the Constitution to me is absolute. And I mix no bones with that, I promise you. But that's where I am in this whole movement of podcasting and shell shocked. And I hope in the future it just continues to grow and we integrate to other platforms. We did with Chatter Social. I was the first space to be integrated with a room on Chatter Social to have, you know, some of the left come in and integrate into the X space. And they were asking questions from another platform into my space. So I want connection like that. I think we should utilize every bit of it to be able to finally calm the seas of politics, right? And start actually having conversations instead of, you know, just insults and no integrity. And that's where I want to go.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's the way that I've tried to comport myself, and I found that it's actually more successful even when I speak in person. That's I think it's been a benefit, and I feel like that I'm a man of faith. I feel like that God has kind of worked with me on that from the first time that I had an opportunity to ask one of my, ask my representatives some questions. I didn't have anything planned. I just spoke from the heart, and I really felt, Christ led to speak with him. But I don't yell, I don't scream, I don't use pejoratives. I'm not out there, posting memes with, somebody's picture on it, or attributing them to some sexual aid, like the guy we were talking about earlier. I don't even like using his name because I don't want to draw any unnecessary attention to him, good or bad. Um, I'm just kind of doing my thing here. I believe that if people can engage in civil and cogent discourse, it's a positive. My grandfather used to say, my mother's father used to say, if you see two people screaming at each other and one of them's the idiot, everybody else observing doesn't know who the idiot is. So, sometimes you have to give the other person a chance to demonstrate exactly who they are. And a good way to do that is sometimes to ignore them, because the worst thing that you can do for a narcissist is to ignore them. They crave that attention. They're like a small child. So I tend to just walk away from that. I'm the same thing. If I'm some, my kids, when they were growing up and I was teaching them how to handle themselves in a threatening situation, that it's always best to get distance and walk away if you can. If you don't, then it's who's willing to do the things that need to be done to protect themselves. And I'm not going to go into details about that. Um, so I think you're onto it right there, and I appreciate the way that you handle it. Your spaces are always fun to be in. I love just listening in. Yours is one of the few ones that I pop into that I don't listen to anonymously because I really enjoy being there. If I pop in anonymously and it's just a bunch of people yelling and screaming at each other, then I can pop out and nobody knows. Nobody's the wiser that I was there. What you mentioned about Salcedo, have you been in touch with him about maybe coming in and maybe having you do his spaces for him?
Yeah, yeah. Uh, Tim Young had him on his show. And
Mhm.
Tim, I was in the audience and I was commenting, and Tim was like, "Oh, Shell, you guys gotta, talk about this." And we did. Chris was like, "Let me follow her," and we got into the DMs and exchanged numbers, and yeah, we're gonna hopefully very soon. Yeah, he's a busy guy, but bring his show into Spaces, bring Spaces into his show. It's just a wonderful way for these radio personalities or TV personalities like Colonel Manus, to get those questions that help guide that show in a new direction, maybe not so structured, but kind of get out there and go, wow, didn't think about that, and then start a new discussion that you didn't even, predict would happen. And it makes a fantastic show. It really does, because you never know from people in Spaces what their mindset is or what their opinions are. And, you get them up there and they ask a question that really piques the interest of your host and their guest. And you're just like, wow, and then there you go. It's just another, exciting conversation that takes place, and new thoughts and new ideas, happen. And it's just fantastic. I love it. And I'm glad that you've come into our Spaces. I think that you can learn a lot. It's not that the arguing doesn't happen. It's that I get a lot of flack. I get a lot of name calling because I'm heavy on the mic, right? I'm a bully on the mic because I do like that control and structure, because without it, again, the conversation's lost, So I'm glad you came in. I'm glad we met, and I'm glad to get to know you. And I think one day maybe you should bring your podcast into Spaces, and just have a live Q&A, every once in a while. I'm not saying every show, but
You
interaction with the
I
audience is
definitely will.
important.
I definitely will look into that. I did enjoy when I was in Stealth Medicals and Kim and I got brought up onto the stage to talk. And initially, it wasn't a pleasant experience. There were a lot of people, just because I was associated with the FBI as a retired FBI agent, that wanted to initially come out and attack me, as that I was part of the problem. And I think that it dispelled some of those beliefs by getting the chance to just engage in civil discourse. That, it's like I tell the whistleblower guys, if they were genuinely, if I had information in front of me that proved that they were genuinely uh, mistreated by the FBI and should not have been exited, I'd be one of their biggest advocates. But if I try to offer you just some advice, just from somebody that's significantly older than they are, to just like, hey, I don't, do you think this is a positive way to comport yourself online, attacking anybody that you disagree with, and calling them these horrific names and posting pictures of them without even knowing who they are? Do you think that's the way to go? And I think that it's going to get adjudicated at some point. I don't know what the status is on it. I don't really ask to find out. I do hope that they get some closure at some point and a decision is made. And I can understand one of them was complaining about the transfer policy. Believe me, I've dealt with the transfer unit before. It's not a fun experience. I can see that happening. Um, as far as you know, I want to know more information, and that's why I ask questions. And my questions have no purpose other than to gather more information. And if I don't get that information, that's fine. I move on, and that's why I've ignored them. I hope that people get a chance to understand me. I'm just a staunch, strict constitutional conservative. I'm a Scalia type guy. Constitution says what it says and nothing else. Otherwise, 5 hotshot attorneys on the Supreme Court would run the country. I was happy to see some of the decisions coming out of the Supreme Court this week. I think they were late in getting it out there, which diminishes their credibility. I do believe, as you do, that your rights are absolute. I've had some arguments with some college professors, some lawyers, and some judges who don't think that way. They don't believe that your rights are absolute. They believe that there's loopholes to all of that. And I haven't been defeated on that debate yet. They try to come up with something, and I point out how that it doesn't support the argument.
Boy,
Um,
can I
so
speak on that real quick, Chris? Look,
sure.
we had a mayoral candidate on the stage. I happened to see him in the audience, and I had read his bio, and I threw him a mic, and he came up, and he calls himself a centrist, basically.
Mhm.
But the subject of the Constitution did come up, and our audience, we're pretty well versed, right? I got a smart audience, and we started questioning him, and he said that there are loopholes in the Constitution, and that it is not absolute. And you talk about, really firing up that space because, you know, it was good to call him on the carpet on a lot of that. We didn't yell, we didn't scream, we didn't try to interrupt each other. It did happen a few times, because it did get a little heated. But it was shocking to know that, this person, and now you see New York's, primary that just happened. Whew, that was a tough one for the Democrats, but and New York City. But just being able to ask those questions of him and see that mindset and wonder, how does this happen? Right? How does somebody get to the mindset that our founding fathers had messed some stuff up, in this great experiment of ours? And the law of the land is not really the law of the land. It should be, the law of the way you want to just live your life and what you believe in. That is not true, you know, um, because, first of all, we have God's law that we follow. Second of all, we're founded one nation under God. Third of all, sorry, not sorry, the Constitution is absolute and it's worked well so far. It's being challenged, a lot in the last decade. It's getting, um, kind of trampled on a little bit, but I think we're going to bounce back, and the Constitution is going to stay strong as the structure of our company or our country and our lawmakers. And I have faith in that. But to hear somebody who wants to run the biggest city in the United States of America say, that it isn't absolute, and then start that conversation, it was wild, dude. It really was. I don't know how you would have that conversation with somebody, but I know
So
how it went
I've
on
had
my
I've
show.
had those conversations. I usually give the person an opportunity to try to defend what their statements are by asking follow-up questions, and then I work toward bringing them to my conclusion. So I believe that your constitutional rights are absolute. I believe that they're there for a reason. And most people, when I question them about the Constitution, they think it grants the government some kind of power, and it does not. It is there to protect the rights of the citizens, and that is it tells the government what it cannot do. It doesn't tell the government what it can do. So the when people try to posit that with trying to look for loopholes and stuff, I just kind of pull them back toward, okay, well, show me where it says that in the Constitution. Scalia was great when people would ask questions about it. He'd go, well, what does the Constitution say? Because he was a textualist like me. As far as the government, and this is where I've gotten into some debates with some individuals, we were brought up thinking that there are three co-equal branches of government, the system of checks and balances. I can tell you from my study of the Constitution from back in the 70s until now, my experience in defending the Constitution, both as a military member for 13 years and as a federal agent for 25 years, the there are not three co-equal branches of government. They're not. The most powerful branch is the legislative branch, the Article 1 branch, because it has the power to overcome the president's veto. If the president doesn't want the legislation to pass, he can veto it, they can overcome that. It also has the power to overturn the Supreme Court. And people freak out when I tell them that. They think that the ultimate arbiter on the Constitution is the Supreme Court, and it's not. It's the people through their elected representatives. And we're finding out that today that there are limits on that. The Article 3 branch, the judiciary, it's the weakest of the branches because it's dependent on the other two to do anything. The executive, each of them have their own enumerated powers that the others don't have. And that was reconciled here recently as well with the Alien Enemies Act, where it is not subject to judicial review. The president's ability to set the immigration policy, to handle foreign policy, it's not subject to the other branches to do anything with that. And that was the last case, and it's real easy to look this stuff up. I'm not an attorney, but it's not hard to look these things up. So there was a case, the last time that this was put to a constitutional test was in 1948 in I think it's Lutke versus Watson, or I think it's Lutke versus Watson, and the Supreme Court even said it's not subject to judicial review. The problem we have is when people infringe upon the Constitution and others sit around and don't do anything. And one of the last things I'll throw out there, sometimes people will talk about that phrase that's attributed to Edmund Burke, which is all it takes for evil to flourish is for good people, good men to stand by and do nothing. I think that's a load of crap. Good men don't stand by and do nothing. Cowards do. And I will defend the Constitution with my life. I've had my life threatened. I've had an individual try to kill me because I was standing up for the Constitution and defending it. So I'm willing to run toward that gunfire. That's something that's unique to military and law enforcement officers, and I have an appreciation for that. And I get frustrated when I hear people, especially former law enforcement individuals, and I'm not going to name their names, when they're out there besmirching and castigating law enforcement. I can tell you from my time inside the FBI, and I was there until 2019. I wasn't there on January 6, 2021, but a lot of the same people were still there. I can tell you that the overwhelming majority of street agents are good constitutional following individuals. When I hear people say things like, well, they should have just not done what they did during January 6th, just refused to go. Well, there's a problem with that because when it's adjudicated, when it's gone through the court system, when you're executing an arrest warrant or a search warrant, it's already signed off by a judge. A judge is directing you and authorizing you to conduct that activity. Now, you can step aside and say, I don't want to be a part of it, but there's consequences to that. They may not be pleasant consequences, but you can't just refuse. Now, you can weigh in, and it was incumbent upon senior agents like myself to weigh in when I thought things were stepping out of bounds. Had I been in on January 6th and the word came down from headquarters, here's a case, go out and arrest this individual based on January 6th. And my first thing is, let's do this the safest, easiest way. Is the person willing to just turn themselves in, and we'll let them have their due process rights. If the special agent in charge had come to me and said, no, I don't like the J6 people, and we're going to take a SWAT team out, and you guys are going to go kick the door in. Yeah,
Hence the case of
I would likely say I'm not participating in that. But if I'm going to complain about it, I'm going to complain about it the way that things are set up for me to do. I'm going to file my complaint with my supervisor, the assistant special agent in charge, SAC, work my way up through the chain of command. If I cannot, for some reason, it has to be articulated as to why I can't use that chain of command, then yeah, I would take it to Congress. I'm not going out to the media to tell them about it. I'm going to do what the statute says.
Let me ask you, what do you think about the case of Chris Cuny?
I'm sorry, with who?
Captain Cuny. His wife, during his J6 arrest and door knock there, lost a child, miscarried. The stress and the trauma to the child that they had, at the time, all of that. Okay, so see, when you say that you're that upstanding, then we hear from a J6er that has had a very traumatic experience with the FBI and the J6, lawfare. So now you see where maybe the audiences are that are hearing from these, individuals could be soured by, the FBI, correct? Where they would
I
have a
understand, but I
different.
think that the responsibility and the attention of that, rather than directing it to the street agents, which have little control, little authority, little ability to even to just say no. They're not going to you can't just say no. It'd be the same thing as in military of being given a direct order to go attack a hill. Those decisions are made at higher levels, and almost all of that was being made through the Department of Justice, through the U.S. Attorney's Office, through FBI headquarters, Comey, Ray, Strzok, Page, Kleinsmith. I can name them all. I think that all of them should go to prison, should go to jail for what they did, for pushing that. But I think that sometimes they're looking for a person to beat across the head and shoulders with that. I get blamed for some J6 stuff, and heck, I was gone for 2 years, over 2 years, before any of that stuff even happened. And I know some of the people that they were blaming. And I said, well, let's provide some clarification here. I'll give you an example. Stephen Jensen. When I came into that spaces, I was talking about Stephen Jensen. They're putting him out to be this foul-mouthed warlord, J6 warlord out there going after J6 people. And I can tell you that's not the case. That's not the Stephen I know. He would have had to change 180 degrees. Number two, he was a section chief at FBI headquarters. They have virtually zero, well, they have zero authority over what goes on in the field. They can send referrals and recommendations down, but those decisions are made at the executive management level. That would be the special agent in charge. And then you handle those things internally. There have been some times that I've had to go toe to toe, but I do it in a professional manner, and I do it within the scope of my position in the FBI to call into question things. Everything from the diversity and inclusion program to, we had an incident where I was a hostage negotiator, and some local police, I feel, got two of the hostages and the hostage taker killed unnecessarily. And I spoke out against the FBI and against the local law enforcement about that. There's ways to do it. Sometimes it may be a whistleblowing activity, but you got to do it. You got to do it the right way. But blaming everybody else for the sins of, of Comey, I thought he was a horrible director. I didn't care for Mueller. I've had words with him. I really didn't care for Chris Wray. I could tell he was an empty suit from the time I met him. Strzok, Page, McCabe, all of them. I think that they dishonored the badge. They caused problems for other individuals. They made it more difficult. My dad was super proud when I fulfilled a lifelong dream to become an FBI agent. And even he, after Comey made his speech on January 5th in 2016 about Hillary Clinton, said, I don't know if I want to tell people you're part of the FBI. I'm nervous about how they're going to react to it, that they're going to equate you with what Comey just did. I actually went to get my lawnmower worked on that day, and the two guys that were there were working on it, asked me if I was in the military because of the short haircut. I said, no, I work for the government. After some pestering, I finally told them I work for the FBI. And their answer was, what the F is wrong with your director? And I had to agree with them. I couldn't speak out as much because of the Hatch Act about things that were going on. But we did make our notifications through the inside. There are ways to do that. Office of Professional Responsibility, EEO, the Ombudsman, your chain of command, the Agents Association. There's multiple avenues that you can seek reconciliation and change. It's not always that you have to in lockstep walk out. First of all, you can't just walk out. It's a Fair Labor Standards Act. So if all of the FBI agents got together and said, we're not doing this, and they all walk outside the gate, they're not getting back in. That's just the way it is.
So
and
how do
it'll
you
get
respond to people who think that the FBI should be disbanded and just demolished?
I think that's ludicrous. I know the good things, and we're starting to see a lot of the good things, especially that Dan Bongino's highlighting out there. The things that happen behind the scenes that a lot of people never hear about. And when you talk about disbanding it, what does that look like? Which agency is going to take it on? You can't just dump it over to another agency. You can't dump it on local law enforcement. They're not capable of handling those things. And it's going to put people in danger if you did something like that. It is idiotic. It is immature. It is insane to think that you would do that. Do I think that you need to hold the people accountable? Yes. Bongino and Patel are doing some things right now inside the FBI. And if people will pay attention, they'll see that they're making some changes. They just walked out two special agents in charge in the last couple of weeks that were still drinking the Comey Kool-Aid. One of those special agents in charge I know and had worked with when she was a field supervisor in the FBI. Didn't care for her then. Definitely don't care for her now. I understand why it happened. And I think it was the right thing to do. They are also taking the time to vet the individuals that they want to put in those positions of leadership. They're taking some quick action. That one special agent in charge, the one that I know, she had just gotten the special agent in charge position in March. She was gone 2 months later. They're not wasting any time with that. They're doing some things on the inside. I think that people are so anxious that they want to see people in handcuffs immediately and don't understand or don't comprehend. A lot of this malfeasance took on from these executive managers that were running everything from headquarters down over the course of 15 plus years. And you're expecting Kash Patel and Dan Bongino to address real world national threats right now and simultaneously take care of malfeasance over the past 15 years in the course of 4 months. it's unrealistic. Now, if we get a couple years in and I'm not seeing the changes, I'll be one of the first ones to criticize them. But so far, in what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing, they're doing some of the things. Are they doing everything that I would like? No. But I'm not going to go out there and say that because they're not responding immediately to my wants and desires, that you should disband the whole thing.
Right.
I'll give you an example, something you don't know, you wouldn't know about me. So there are people out there that do this every day in the FBI. So in 2010, I get a notification from St. Louis Division that there's an individual trading in child pornographic images, just victimizing kids over and over and over. And I take it on, I run the case, I narrow it down to 3 locations in West Mississippi, and we execute some search warrants. And we come across the one of the individuals, ended up finding a dad that was videotaping his prepubescent stepdaughters through a bathroom window. We found video of that on his computer. The other was this 21-year-old boy. The computers got seized. They were taken back to the office. Before we could finish the search scene, I get a call from the computer analysis people saying, you need to come back to the office. I rush back to the office, 60 miles away. I get in, and I have to sit and watch 2 50-minute videos of this 21-year-old man raping an 11 and 8-year-old boy, sodomizing over and over
Oh
and over.
God. Oh.
So we ended up going after him. He ran off. We caught him up in Tunica, Mississippi, got him in. He ended up confessing to all of it. Of course, we had it on video. Ran that case with the local sheriff's department, Warren County Sheriff's Office. He got 35 years in federal prison based on the case that we worked, and he got 85 years on top of that from the state level. But those cases happen every day. So let's disband the FBI. Those cases don't get worked.
Well,
The locals don't have the capability of handling it.
Right. Do you see the American public's trust being reinstated to these 3-letter agencies? Because it's not just the FBI.
It's going to take a while.
It's
It
going to
is
take a
going to
while.
take a while. I
Do you,
think
do you
that
think it'll happen?
I do think at some point it can happen. Whether it will happen, I don't know. I've given some recommendations. If somebody wants to go out and look on the Montana Sentinel, I wrote an article, Day One Agenda for the next FBI director. This was way before Kash Patel. The first is get back to strict adherence to the Constitution. Everything that you do, from physical fitness to firearms to investigative work, needs to revolve around the protection of the civil liberties. It's literally the one thing that you swear an oath to do. The second, and I think a way to bring back some of that respect to the FBI, is look the part and act the part. Just look professional. I have called out Kash Patel for his reluctance when he first got in about wearing a suit. Word got back to me that he was making presentations to onboard FBI agents. Hey, I don't really like the suit. Don't care whether you wear the suit or not. I'm sorry. That's the uniform of an FBI agent. Most of these FBI agents make between $125,000 and $150,000 a year, depending on where they are. And you can afford to go get a suit. The saying was, when I came in, when you showed up on the crime scene, the bank robbery scene, you're looking for the person in charge. You're looking for the person in the suit. Every interview and interrogation that I did, it would be a rarity that I didn't do it in the suit, because you come in and it brings a sense of professionalism to it and respect, just looking the part and acting the part. And then you follow that up with your actions. I don't want to see any more Ring doorbell cameras of agents in untucked polo shirts, cargo pants, and hiking boots. I think it's unprofessional. You shouldn't have to convince somebody who you are.
So the optics, the optics are very important.
The optics are there.
Yeah.
I think that's there. I think that the other is transparency. I see Patel doing that. He's responded to things that Chris Wray didn't. You just saw the stuff about China. Chris Wray didn't provide that during his testimony. And I'm a big proponent. There's nothing that the FBI does that can't be disclosed to our representatives. You can just figure out what venue you're going to do it, whether it's behind the scenes in a skiff or whatever. But we've got to have that oversight. And I'm sorry, there is no DOJ policy that trumps the Constitution. So I'm a strict adherent on that. I think that over the course of time, when they see that, with talking to the people about the things that the FBI does daily, that protects them, of giving them an opportunity to speak, of being transparent. Look at what happened up in Denver. And I want to highlight that special agent in charge. Most of the time when you have a significant event like that, like the shooting, that transgender domestic terrorist shooting up in Nashville, where she killed those children, they gave one press conference and then everything kind of went away. and we didn't hear anything about it again until they finally got the manifesto out there. Look what happened in Denver. Special Agent Charge speaks, takes charge of the situation, tells them what's going on, said we're going to have a follow-up, had another press conference to give an update of the information, and then he tasked his public affairs officer to constantly give information and provide it to the public. I think when you're more transparent with the public, I think that is great. And I think uh, once we get more of that, we can start earning that trust back. It's going to take a while to do it. It's the same
But then
thing that
you have the state of Minnesota. You look at Tim Walz's tragedy up there. All right. We heard there's a manifesto. It's going to be released. Then there's not a manifesto. Then they're quoting the manifesto, but there's still not a manifesto. Where do we get the trust back? I mean, you talk about a misleading and confusing, you know, uh, and non-transparent way to do things, because we've had a few press conferences from them now. How do we straighten that out? How do we get to the point where they're not going to get in front of a mic unless they're going to give us 100% of the truth, or not even bring up something that we don't need to know right now until they're ready to release that as an absolute, this is what happened and these are the charges, we've caught him. But why the confusion and the misleading headlines and everything coming out because of these, people that you represent and law enforcement that will get out there and say, well, we have a manifesto and it's, this is the reason he did it. And then, no, we don't have a manifesto. And then, well, here, I'm going to quote the manifesto. I mean, you can't do that, Chris. You
No,
cannot
you can't.
do
You
that.
can't. And the thing with Nashville, and I was on that from day one. It's in that article I wrote last November. One of the things, you have to release that manifesto. You have to give some updates on the assassination attempts against President Trump. You have to be transparent with that. Some of the things I think were a bad look. I was critical of Bondi with giving out those big binders on the Epstein stuff. It was stuff that everybody else already knew. It gave some unrealistic expectations. You also have to take into account the victims. Do they want to be identified? Do they want to have their lives exposed? The feeding frenzy that can happen in the media once you start identifying victims, that they'll flood and descend on them. And some people just want to be left alone. So you have to respect their rights as well, but be forthcoming about that. Hey, here's why we can't give you everything right now. One was CSAM material, child sexual abuse material. You can't just put that out there and give it out to everybody. Those things, because then you end up making those victims over and over and over. That's why projects that began under the FBI, like the Innocent Images Project, where we hash value those images so that even images from 25 years ago, if that exact same image shows up somewhere else, it's another charge, even though that the subject of that child may now be in their 20, 25, 30 years old. But those are a lot of the good things the FBI is doing. I think they're being really transparent about that. If I had some critique on Kash Patel, primarily Bondi, quit doing so much Fox News. Heck, come on the Rob Manus show and let people ask you questions. Go on Chris Salcedo's show. I told Chris if I had an in with Kash Patel, I would lobby for him to come on Newsmax and have some, answer some questions from him. I think it'll eventually get there. Like the prosecutions, it's not going to happen in a short period of time. As long as we're moving in the right direction, I'll champion that. If it steps outside of that and I see them doing things like the past administrations, I'll call that out as well. Right now, I do everything I can as a private citizen to champion the good things that are happening out there. The agents that are going out and tackling those, child abusers and child molesters and people that are violating civil rights. The majority of the people are doing a good job. You have some managers that were in the FBI that right before Kash got in, they walked out 8 executives, 8 in major field offices, walked them out. Just told them, retire by Friday or Monday, you're going to be a GS-15, which is significant pay cut. And they chose to go ahead and retire. It's faster to get them out of the way that way and then look at possible prosecutions or any types of charges or just sunlight being the best disinfectant. I think the transparency is going to go a long way. The demonstrated strict adherence to the Constitution, getting out and mingling with the public and answering questions, doing things like you and I are doing right now, having tough conversations. I'm willing to get out there on the spaces. Not gonna get in there, and I appreciate Stealth Medical and Heather for kind of reining some people back in, because before I could get a word out, I'm getting screamed at in that room. And like, just, hey, give a chance to listen to me. You and I have gotten to know each other. And I think you know where I come from on the Constitution. I'm a strict adherent to it. And I do get upset when people question my integrity. But I'm not going to spend all day on X trying to defend that. More often than not, I'm just going to ignore the person that's saying it. And often, if I respond, and I get these from guys in my circle, why are you responding to this person that has like 132 followers? Well, they have a valid question, and I want to answer it. Second, the message may not just be for them; it may be for somebody else. But I'll go out there and advocate for the Constitution, for the FBI that I joined. I want to see it get back to the way it was when I came in. And those are the things that I'm championing. I'm not an apologist for any of those people. I just told you, I think Comey, Ray, Strzok, Page, Kleinsmith should all be put in prison, never to see the light of day. They violated the Constitution. I do think that some of the special agents in charge that made the decision to send out SWAT teams when they could have just called and had somebody report, I think they should be held accountable. But to try to hold a street agent accountable for being told, here is an arrest warrant that was signed off by a judge, go arrest this person. Now, if they gave it to me, even though I may disagree with the affidavit, I may disagree that the person should be charged, that would be a personal opinion. But if the judge says this has to be done, it has to be done. I would try to do what I could to affect the way that it's going to be done. And I'm always a big fan of, hey, let's just meet down at the courthouse. There's no reason for me to come to your house. There's no reason to knock on the door. I try to work through the attorneys. I've done that a number of times. It's been a rarity that I've had to go arrest somebody and kick a door in. That's usually after all other efforts have been exhausted. I think that there was a rambunctiousness from DOJ and FBI leadership at that time, and that's why you saw things get such out of hand. So I hope that kind of explains where I'm coming from.
It does, and I'm happy to have that clarification from you. I really am. That things are tough to clean up there, and some of the inner workings, that we don't understand. You've kind of brought to the table and helped me, with a better understanding for that. And I thank you for that, and thanks for answering my questions. I have a tendency with the job that I do to turn around and interview, dude. So it's
I know
it's a
I
bad
had you on this
habit.
show so we could learn more about you, and you're
Yeah,
sitting here interviewing me.
it's a bad habit, Chris. It really is. And my biggest
It's a
question I
good
want to
habit. It's a
ask
good
you
habit.
still is the Comey, secret evidence room. Are we going to hear some more about that? Are we going to see some more coming out about that?
I think a lot of that, having been in that office before, when I've been in that office twice in my career. The first was as a young FBI agent at the academy right before graduation. They took us up and we sat with Director Free, walked through the office. I was amazed at the transparency in his office because the Waco report was sitting on his desk and I could thumb through it if I wanted to. He's like, hey, you guys are in the FBI now. This is what you get access to. We sat in his conference room for about an hour and a half and just talked about anything we wanted to talk about. The second time was when I went up to, I was a tour shooter. I wanted to interact with the public and give the public some insight on what's going on inside the FBI. I hope they bring the tour shoot back. Over my shoulder up here, you'll see a picture of my FBI graduating class. It's attached to a target that I used back in 2000. And was doing the shooting demonstration. And I took that target up to the seventh floor and walked in and asked if Director Free would sign it. We only had the two kids at the time. So it's autographed to my two oldest boys, Jake and Josh. It says, to Jake and Josh, best wishes, Louis Free. It's written in ballpoint pen, blue ballpoint pen. J. Edgar Hoover didn't allow agents to have blue pens at the time. He was the only one to have it. So it's significant that it was signed in blue pen. I think that there's an opportunity there. I would encourage them to bring back the tour shoot. One of the things that I truly enjoyed was after doing a firearms demonstration was coming out from behind the glass and there would be 150 people in the audience, a lot of kids. It's just a chance to ask questions of an FBI agent. And one of the things that really warmed my heart was when a kid would say, can I have the target? And then even more so, would you sign the target for me? So my signature is probably out there in some places. I'm proud of the work that I did in the FBI, the fact that I had the chance to work on the Mississippi burning case and bring some resolution to those families. from my time over in a Baghdad prison interrogating jihadis, battlefield combatants, and terrorists, to being a hostage negotiator and trying to bring some resolution there. I'm proud of the career that I had. I'm reluctant sometimes to tell people about it because of the tarnishment that was brought to the badge by Strzok, Page, Comey, Kleinsmith. Uh, it's they created a mess, and it's going to take a while to clean it up. And I hope people will be a little more patient with Bongino and Patel. Believe me, if you start seeing retired agents like myself start questioning why is this taking so long, then it's starting to get beyond when it should have been taken care of, because we've been on the inside and we know how long it should take to address some things. Some things are probably never going to be addressed to everybody's satisfaction. But Shell, I appreciate having you on. We've gone long today. I want to get this out there so that people can see it. When are you and Rob back on the air again?
Well, next week is the 4th of July holiday, so we're off all week. But the
Oh,
following Monday, we will be back at 3 p.m. Eastern with the Rob Manus Show live. And it's going to be a lot of fun. We work hard. I help the Colonel get some talent. And of course, he knows so many people too. But, I think hopefully, the More War Monday theme is going to be changed in the near future. And we've all been praying for that, right? So
yep.
I'm looking forward to starting the new week after the holiday with him. And I can't wait for it. And then Grunt Style will be Wednesday nights. And that's all I'm going to do this week besides, my own show on Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. So, and Grunt Style, I couldn't work for a better organization, the Grunt Style Foundation, with veterans. And I wanted to tell you, thank you for your service, sir.
Well,
So,
thank you so much. I joined in '86, spent some time in Turkey, and then bounced around the United States, and eventually became an Air Force Office of Special Investigations agent the last 5 years. And that's where the FBI recruited me. I appreciate your service and the Colonel's service. I'm hoping, since he's off this week, unless he's out of town, there's a luncheon here that we have first Wednesday of the month. It's going to be on July 2nd. Hopefully the Colonel will come up there. I'll shoot him a text message and invite him up. I know Gannon Burton will definitely be there, and I know you guys have had him on the show, and
I
the Colonel.
love Colonel Burton. He's
he,
he's
he
a
is he's a
he's a
good guy.
Marine on a mission, sir. He is a
Oh
Marine
yeah.
on a mission. He wants those vaccines, exterminated, eliminated, and
Yep.
accountability. And
Yep.
and
I
I
hope that
love
he
his
ends up
drive.
running for Senate again. I would vote for him. I voted for him last time. I think tell the Colonel, if you talk to him before I do, tell him hello. I'm trying to work real hard to get that radio voice that he's got. He definitely has a radio voice. He could be a DJ on any rock radio station with that
Oh
deep
no,
voice.
I tell him it's got to be disco. No rock for him. It's got to be it's got to be disco for the Colonel. But I just tease him
Well,
about it all the time. But I agree 100%. His
yeah.
voice is the best. He does have a great voice for radio.
Well, Shell, it has been amazing. I look forward to having you on again. I look forward to the next time Rob has me on his show. We're just getting started here. I tell people, I'm working right now to try to get Victor Davis Hanson on the show. I've been in contact with his handler, and I think I'm getting close. We'll see. I really admire him. And I tell people, hey, we're just getting started on this. Get on the ground floor. Everybody had to start somewhere. We've only got a few followers right now on this. I think you're going to bring some more to that, some more credibility. And I look forward to chatting with you in the future. Thank you so much for coming on today. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Chris. I was very surprised that you were going to ask me, but I'm glad I did it, and I'm glad I learned a lot more about the FBI than I knew before. And you helped facilitate that. And this is a great show. Keep plugging away, man. You're going to make it. It's going to be great.
I will. I hope to highlight some people on there that people need to get to know. So when you talk to Stealth Medical again, I had offered her an opportunity to come on here. She's so busy, she hadn't had time to respond. That running those 5 and 6 hour spaces meetings has got to be draining. And Liberty Valkyrie, Heather, love to have her on as well. We're going to try to run the gamut on this. Some of the stuff that we have on probably won't be even FBI centric. It may not even be political centric. I just want to get to know people, to get into this community, and hopefully we can make a difference. I do think that our country's best days are ahead. I think God intervened with putting Trump back in office. I do think that the FBI's best days are ahead. Cash Patel and Dan Bongino weren't my first choices, but if they are looking to clean the FBI up, I'll do everything I can to help them do that.
Well, I appreciate you, Chris, and I hope you have a wonderful day. And thanks for the great talk.
Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. All right, Mr. Producer, let's go ahead and sign off here. This is Chris Hinkle, your blunt force conservative. We had a great conversation with Shell from the Rob Maness Show. Do follow Shell. She is Hot Tamale 02. Is it 20? Yeah, Hot Tamale 02 is her handle there on X. Highly encourage you to follow her. Get notified when she's hosting some spaces. And then jump into some of those spaces. We'll be back next week, maybe. We'll have to find out. I'm going to be out of town the 4th, that weekend of the 4th. We'll leave out of here Thursday. I'm going to go over and visit. My dad's birthday is on the 4th of July. So we'll spend some time there. I'll actually be there with producer Chris, and we'll see about maybe hosting one while we're there in Tuscaloosa, over in the Holy Lands of Alabama, the home of college football, Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So we'll see you next time on the Blunt Force Conservative. Be on the lookout for our next venture out there. We may even start posting some small little snippet videos here and there on YouTube and X. Thank you again for tuning in.